Welcome to the ABCs of Right Standing
Radio Show.
7 minutes of righteousness, helping you to know that God has made you right. Brought to you by the 1412
Radio Network.
Now we know that we were made miracles.
Hi everybody, this is Matt from TwoGuysAndABible.com, and this episode of the ABCs of Right Standing is brought to you by the letter T. Part 2. Call this the ABCs of Right Standing because we use all the letters of the alphabet that make up the words that tell you how God sees you. And did you know today that He sees you as His temple? That's right. If you look at 1 Corinthians 3:16, He said, "Know ye not that you're a temple of God, and the Spirit of God dwelleth in you." That's the King James. Here's the Message Bible. You realize, don't you, that you're a temple of God, and God Himself is present in you. I'm just going to give you a bunch of verses here. Here's the Amplified, because it brings out the language of how Paul is writing this letter to the church. And at this point, it's decades later. You got to think to yourself that it might have been a whole generation or two since Jesus rose from the dead. And there might have been a whole generation of kids who weren't raised in the Corinthian church, who weren't raised in the Jewish tradition. They were born-again believers. And at this point, they probably knew about customs and things that were going on, but they must have needed a reminder. Paul says to them, you realize, don't you, you're a temple of God, and God Himself is present in you. Well, that's a good reminder. 1 Corinthians 3:16 in the Amplified says, do you not discern and understand that you, the whole church at Corinth, are God's temple, His sanctuary, and that God's Spirit has His permanent dwelling in you, to be at home in you, collectively as a church, and also individually. Here's another one in the Good News Bible. Surely you know that you're God's temple and that God's Spirit lives in you. The Weymouth says, do you not know that you're God's sanctuary and that the Spirit of God has His home within you? Young's literal, you're a sanctuary of God, and the Spirit of God does dwell in you. Well, this is very clear in all translations, in any kind of verses, that the Spirit of God is located in the believer. Now, you are the temple. There's no longer a temple made of human hands, one that is tucked away behind a big curtain that only the priest can go into. But now that word temple right there means to dwell. Well, where does His Spirit dwell now? In the believer, in you, in His church. It's a shrine. That's another definition of this word. And we are to compare, it says, if you look up in your Greek dictionary, you're to compare this other word that means a sacred place. It denotes the central sanctuary itself of the temple. Well, where is the central place where His Spirit dwells these days? That is you. Within you, through you. If there's any point where you have questioned and you have said to yourself, God, where are you? It's very clear by His Word, by the Spirit, that He didn't go anywhere, but you're His dwelling place. His Spirit lives in you big, I should say, because now if you look at a shrine, a sanctuary, a place where the Creator of the universe chose to put His Spirit, that's got to be a big spot. That's you are the spot where He lives. So I'm going to read you 1 Peter 2 in verse 9. Because it says, now, you are the chosen race, a royal priesthood, a dedicated nation, God's own purchased special people, that you may set forth the wonderful deeds and display the virtues and perfections of Him who called you out of darkness into marvelous light. Well, now you are the royal priest, because the priest used to go into the temple where God's Spirit was. Now, since God's Spirit lives in you, You have to be. It's the opposite. Man used to do it where he went in as the priest and made a sacrifice, put the blood on the altar, made the atonement, did it for the people to cover their sins, and it was just temporary. But now how God does things by his Spirit through his chosen race, you, by his sanctuary, his nation, he decides to make you the priest, but put his Spirit on the inside of you. You are his own purchased special person. Why? Why did he do this? So he can set forth his wonderful deeds and displayed the virtues and perfections. Because he called you out of darkness into marvelous light. Now you are the displayer. You are what God chose to display his light, his victory, his grace, his love to the whole world. You are now the central spot of his Spirit. Now that's a good place. So don't go around saying you're not sure where God is, you're not sure where his Spirit is, or waiting for the Spirit to come. Because now that you're his temple, God's Spirit is dwelling in you, living in you, and that is constant all the time. This has been the ABCs of Your Right Standing. Today's episode was brought to you by the letter T, Part 2. It's 7 minutes of righteousness, helping you to know that God has made you the temple where the Spirit of God dwells. If you would like a free copy of the ebook, ABCs of Your Right Standing, just email me, Matt at TwoGuysAndABible.com, and I'll be happy to send you one. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great day.